I've got some great news for you this morning. Many of you know as a church a while back, we were approaching the end of the year and we're looking at a shortfall of a budget, but we had felt that God was putting on our heart to plant a church down in the Dominican Republic. And so partnering with another church in Long Beach, Light and Life Church, we came together, we prayed about starting a church over there. And so here's even when we went down to the trip, here was the land that we were looking at. As you can see, the foundation walls there. And so the next slide, you see Paul Paniagua, our chair, board, and we're there. And we're praying over Pastor Isidro. And so just an incredible story. Because here you have Pastor Isidro, who was a church planter. He was a businessman who had been called to be a pastor. And so he's there in the next door community. And God had done some incredible things through the church, that they had built a baseball field, they were reaching out to the community, they had built a water filtration system, have given people in the community jobs and clean water. And so the government was watching all of the things that God was doing through them. And so God had put on Pastor Isidro's heart to start another church in another community that was even less developed and just wrestling and dealing with so much poverty. And so the government reached out. He would begin praying, and God put on his heart to start another church. And he had been looking for land and looking to buy more land. And the government reached out and said, "We'll give this to you." And he said, "No strings attached, no strings attached. This is your land," because they saw the work that he had been doing and the transformation in people's lives. And so even one of his former students that came up, Welvin, who had come to know, came off the streets and came to know Jesus. His whole life was transformed. He is now going off. He's in seminary, recently married, and off to be a pastor and will lead in this future site. I mean, this site, as many of you know the story, it's just incredible as it is. The gift of this land, and the church rallied up as much money as they could to build this foundation where you need rocks and water to create cement and pour the foundation. But in this community, there isn't running electricity and water. And so the water would have to be brought in. But one man, as he was beginning in the church, and they were beginning this work, had felt that he heard from the Lord that there's water there. And so he was out digging, and even one of the neighbors yelled at him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm digging for water." And the man yelled back, "There's no water here. I've been here 30 years. We have no water." And the man said, "I feel like I've heard from the Lord." And so he digs, and he digs, and just right beyond this corner, he struck water. There have been people in this community that have lived for a long time, even some their whole lives, and never knew there was water there. And now they found the water, they ran it under, and they were able to use to save thousands of dollars to be able to build the foundation. And eventually, someday, they'll have a well there of water that they'll help use to help bless the community. So God already doing incredible things. Then he gathered the church and they saved up enough money to build this foundation. It's their land. They built the foundation. And that's our goal as a church. We had heard about this. Our goal was to come in and empower the good work that's already there. Not to come in as Americans saying we have all the answers, but to realize the good work that people are already doing. And so along with Light and Life Church, we said, God is doing something here. And so we wanted, and as a community, you gave generously so this church could go up, so that there would be a church facility and worship spaces down below, and up above there would be classrooms to reach 200 children. Children like Welvin, other children that have grown up, some doctors, lawyers, dentists. I mean, it's incredible. The list goes on. Politicians, teachers, and just so many people have come up through these programs that they're fed physically, they're given social care, health care. The church is the one taking care of these children and blessing them. So a house of worship and classroom for 200. Church, you help build this church, and you can see the walls going up. And as the walls have been going up, Pastor Welvin and the team have continued to reach children that walk alongside children in the community, many experiencing poverty. And Pastor Elroy, who has been to Haiti in the years past, and so many children in this community, some of which they've said even as high as 40% of the children come from Haitian background. They're Haitian. And so what's happening during the pandemic is if they're coming from outside and they don't have citizenship in the country, they aren't receiving care during this pandemic. And so not only are they living in poverty, but now they're not receiving government care. And so it's just in a hard time. So many are going through such a difficult season, but it's so neat to see the church walk alongside, journey, and bless. I'm going to share a story more in a moment. But as they're reaching, as they're sharing the gospel, blessing in both meeting physical needs and spiritual needs, teaching these children, teaching the community about Jesus, walking with them. And meanwhile, the church is going up, and you can see the progress that has been going on and building. And now, to this day, exciting news, here we have the church fully built. It's here, church, because of your generosity. They now have a physical space. A space to worship, and a space where these children will come, they'll learn, they'll grow together. But you'll see what's even as beautiful as the building is, and all these pictures are incredible. There's a picture that I think's even more beautiful. In the midst of a community that's dealing with so much poverty and so much is this picture. You see, the church, they had gathered an offering. They all gathered an offering, and they bought food so they could feed other people in the community. So they welcomed them into the church, and they fed them. They gave them everything that they could. I love this. Church, as your generosity, as we were looking at our budget and said, hey, we're not sure if we have enough, but we can't not do this. And I love a community that I'm so inspired by this, even during such a difficult time. The Dominican Republic depends on tourism, and so many of their jobs have been impacted, but they don't stop caring for others. What a beautiful picture of Jesus working and living through his body, the church. I love how generosity is inspired and inspires more generosity, and God has already been doing something incredible there, so we can't take any credit for that. But I love what is going on. And so thank you, church, for your generosity. Thank you for continuing to pray. Would you also pray? This is Pastor Welvin. Here he has been called by God to plant a church. And like many church planting pastors in developing nations, is bivocational. So meaning he has a job, a full-time job, working in the hotel industry, as well as working as a pastor in the church and pastoring this community. And so because tourism has been hit hard all throughout the Dominican Republic, that there were layoffs all across the board, and Pastor Welvin had lost his job. And so even asking him, what is he going to do and through this season? And he just smiles, and he was telling me and a few other pastors that he's just going to keep trusting God. He says, you might see me smile, but because the Lord is my strength. The Lord is my joy. And man, I just felt like that was such a good word, and that's exactly where Jesus is leading us today.